Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and today Trump will be announcing his plans to crash the American and global economy. However, because Americans like to get out of bed somewhere between 5 and 8 hours late, he won't actually be announcing them in time for me to discuss them until tomorrow. But we know enough to be able to put at least some of the disinformation appearing in today's news to bed. But first, for daily news and commentary, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So the first thing to address will be the front page of the Daily Mail, the idea that Trump's tariffs will wipe out the fiscal headroom Reeves announced just last week. Now, it is true that the OBR have said that the tariffs could threaten to do that over time, but they've also said it is unlikely due to a few factors. And then there are a few other factors which should be considered on top. So it's certainly not going to be a crisis next week, although both the media and politicians may behave as if it is. And the headroom is not going to be wiped out for a few years, at least. The OBR have said that the headroom would be wiped out if blanket tariffs of 20 to 25% are imposed over 5 years. So immediately, for that headroom to be wiped out as a result of this, we would have to be subject to the full tariff schedule for a full 5 years. That is possible, and it is unlikely, say the OBR. And I suppose there are a couple of reasons for suggesting this, as far as I can tell. The first is that the UK are working on a trade deal with the US. They expect it to ease at least some of the tariffs once it is agreed. After all, if the trade deal doesn't work for us, we won't be agreeing to it. Boris Johnson would have already agreed to all of Trump's terms by now. I mean, if he did it for Australia, of course he would do it for America. But the current government wanted this deal concluded quickly to avoid as much tariff damage as possible. But there's no point in accepting something which is net bad for the economy or standards. Labour have already had to rebuff the Americans on food standards, online safety laws and equality practices. So there is every chance that if Trump wants his trade deal, he's going to have to ease tariffs. After all, trade deals of this sort are all about lowering tariffs. That's what they do. The second is that if Trump really does announce 20 to 25% tariffs on all imports from, say, the EU, UK, Canada, Mexico, China, let alone the rest of the world, that's not going to do what Trump wants. He says that part of the rationale is to bring manufacturing jobs back to America. Now, it will and won't do that. When he tried something similar during his first term, it did indeed boost some jobs in manufacturing. But it costs more jobs elsewhere. Like Harley Davidson even drew up plans to move jobs to Europe as a result of the countermeasures. So it works both ways. Trump will certainly create some jobs in America as a direct result of this policy. But he will lose more in America, just like last time. It will mean a net loss of jobs. And because Trump is giving the impression that he will announce an all-in strategy, like no caution this time, no messing about, the impact could well be swift and brutal. The idea that the tariffs will hold in their currently envisaged form for even a year seems doubtful. A full 5 years? I mean, would there be anything left of the US economy? I noticed, for example, that Goldman Sachs have upgraded their estimations of the chances of a US recession, but they still place it below 50%. In other words, they still think a recession is unlikely. Now, is that because they don't think this trade war will trigger recession? That seems doubtful. So maybe they simply believe that Trump will back down a bit when the shit hits the fan. We'll see. But either way, the chances of us having to put up with blanket 25% tariffs for a full 5 years is considered doubtful by the OBR. And that's what would need to happen to wipe out that fiscal headroom. However, let us say Trump did keep 25% tariffs on us for 5 years. You can't rule it out. He is a bit mad. For that, of course, he would actually have to be that mad. And his grip on America would have to be very, very strong. But maybe it is, right? Even then, it's still not a crisis in the way the Daily Mail describes. Because as has been pointed out a few times, some of what Labour are doing and attempting to do will grow the economy beyond that which the OBR are forecasting. For example, the OBR are not factoring in the planning reforms, they say, because they don't know the details yet. They are also not factoring in closer trade arrangements with the EU for the same reason. We don't know what they are. They have also not factored in the impact of the back to work programs. All of these things may be difficult to forecast, but they will all be net positive to economic growth, which of course means that in a few years' time, they will offset some or maybe even all of the damage caused by the tariffs, even if those tariffs persist. And then, of course, if worse comes to worse, Reeves does actually have options for raising taxes on the wealthy, which would not likely harm investment, which she should have already done, quite frankly. But the options are there if backed into a corner. So although whatever Trump announces is not going to be good, like it will not be good for people whose jobs depend on those exports, it will also impoverish customers in America as well as the European markets, meaning that our exports will naturally suffer, because people everywhere will have less money. So even our exports to Europe could suffer as a result of the fact that Europeans won't have as much money to spend because of the bloody tariffs, right? And all of this money is just being vacuumed up by various governments who are applying these tariffs and counter tariffs. I do have other worries as well. The potential loss of jobs in car manufacturing. I mean, that is going to hit the sort of industrial towns where people tend to, vote against their own interests. They are going to tend towards Reform UK when things get shit. Now, would job losses ironically help Farage, even though they would be voting for the same politics that cost them that job? Or will they see that the damage has been caused by, Farage's favourite sugar daddy, Trump? So I do have concerns. The fact that our overall economy should be able to take it doesn't help those whose jobs are going to be vulnerable. The potential for people to vote for the charlatan whose politics costs them their jobs, that is a worry. But there are silver linings too. It will mean closer trade with the EU becomes not only more important, but more urgent. I want to talk about the EU summit taking place next month at some point, because that now becomes much more interesting. But it will not be a crisis for the country in the terms described here. The main reason it's even a serious concern is our economy has been flatlining for years, and any little knock just seems really bad. It's been like having been beaten up and then someone slaps you across the face. It's like, can you not? And that's not just me saying it. That is the OBR themselves. They have said the chances of it kicking the crap out of the budget are low. Not that you would expect much of the gutter press to report that, just like they couldn't be bothered reporting the above inflation pay boost for people yesterday. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.